Diving deep today into something absolutely massive happening in the crypto world.
Yeah, yep.
The Pi Network, get this, they are launching their open network officially.
Big moment for sure. Yeah,
I
and
know, right? And for anyone out there just tuning in with us, Pi Network, they've been making headlines, right? With this whole idea of making cryptocurrency for everyone, not just the techie people.
exactly.
They've been at this for years, building up this huge community of 47 million pioneers.
Right. And one of the things that makes Pi really interesting is how easy it is to get started.
Yeah,
They have an app on your phone. You can mine Pi. Just tap a button on your phone once a day. You don't have to
it's so simple.
be a computer whiz or have all that fancy equipment.
Exactly. You don't need a basement full of mining rigs or anything like that.
Right.
So they hit this incredible milestone. Over 10 million users have already moved to their mainnet.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, if you think about it, it's like moving from a test kitchen to a full-blown, fully operational restaurant, right?
Oh, that's a great analogy. And this open network launch, it's basically like opening the doors to that restaurant to the public.
Wow.
Now, anyone can technically connect to the Pi network.
Oh, okay.
But Pi is managing this very carefully.
Okay, so they're not just flinging open the doors and letting everybody stampede in.
Exactly. It's kind of like they're taking a phased approach. The core team, they're inviting pioneers to move their nodes over based on their contributions and how reliable they've been.
So it's kind of like a VIP opening night, right, where the most trusted people in the community get in first.
Yeah, I like that.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about security and everything.
Oh, for sure. They're putting a big emphasis on security, and they're really focused on compliance too. They already have things like, know your customer, put all the individual users, and KYB, know your business for all the companies that want to get involved.
So no shady characters sneaking in the back.
Right, exactly.
Got it. And actually, our sources mentioned that they already have something like 19 million KYC verifications already.
Yeah, that's a huge number.
That's massive.
It's a big step towards building trust and showing the regulators that they're serious about creating a safe and legitimate ecosystem.
Yeah, it seems like, from what I was reading, meeting those open network conditions, that was a big hurdle for Pi Network. They needed something like 10 million users to move over to the mainnet, and they totally blew past that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they're exceeding their goals, it just shows how engaged the community is.
So let's kind of break this down for our listeners.
Yeah.
The open network, it means Pi is opening up to the world, right? They're focusing really hard on security and compliance, and they need pioneers and developers to keep building and refining things. But what does this actually mean for the average person?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
This open network, it's like Pi is stepping onto the global stage, It's going from being a local band to having your music on Spotify for the whole world to hear, right? The Pi blockchain, now it can actually interact with other blockchains and other systems.
Hold on, so you're saying Pi could potentially be used on other platforms, not just within its own little world?
That's exactly it.
Wow.
Think about the probabilities, right?
Yeah.
You could potentially have Pi-based decentralized finance applications, games that use Pi, or even integrations with other big blockchains like Ethereum.
Okay, so we're not just talking about sending Pi back and forth between friends anymore.
Right.
This is a whole universe of potential applications opening up.
Exactly.
Right.
And don't forget about businesses.
All right.
Now that the network is open, companies, they can start integrating Pi into their payment systems, their loyalty programs, you name it, right?
Wow.
We could be seeing Pi used to buy real-world goods and services on a much bigger scale.
Okay, now it's really getting excited.
Yeah.
This isn't just some abstract tech thing anymore.
Exactly.
We're talking about Pi potentially becoming part of our everyday lives.
And remember, this is just the beginning, right?
Oh, yeah.
The open network launch is a starting point. As more developers, more businesses, they get involved, the Pi ecosystem, it'll just keep growing and evolving. Who knows what kind of crazy, innovative applications we'll see in the coming months and years.
It's like the Wild West of crypto out there, and Pi Network is staking their claim with this open network launch.
But unlike the Wild West, they're bringing a strong sense of community and a commitment to responsible development.
Right.
So it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out.
I agree. Okay, so we've talked about, what the open network means in a big picture way.
Right.
But let's kind of zoom in on the more technical side of things for a minute.
Sure.
What's happening at the blockchain level that's really noteworthy here?
Well, one of the biggest changes is that they've removed the firewall that was in place during the enclosed network.
Okay, so our source material mentioned that, but it didn't really explain what that, means.
Right.
Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so essentially that firewall, it acted like a barrier, keeping the Pi blockchain separate from the rest of the crypto world.
Okay.
But now that it's gone, the Pi blockchain, it can directly communicate and interact with other blockchains and systems.
So before it was like Pi was on its own little island.
Yeah.
And now they've built a bridge to the mainland.
Exactly. And this opens up some really exciting possibilities for interoperability.
Oh.
We could see Pi being integrated into decentralized exchanges or even used in cross-chain applications.
Wait, so you're saying I could potentially swap my Pi for, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum directly, without having to go through a centralized exchange?
Potentially, yes.
Wow.
The open network, it really lays the groundwork for that kind of integration.
That's pretty cool.
And remember we were talking about decentralized finance, DeFi, earlier?
Yeah.
Well, this opens the door for Pi to be used in DeFi applications that are built on other blockchains.
So things like lending, borrowing, yield farming, but using Pi?
Exactly.
That's pretty wild. Okay, so the firewall's down. What else has changed technically? What about their consensus mechanism, the Stellar Consensus Protocol? What's happening there?
That's a great question. From what I understand, the core team, they're constantly working on optimizing the Stellar Consensus Protocol, kind of behind the scenes.
Okay, for those of us who don't speak, crypto geek, can you explain, why that matters?
Yeah, so the consensus mechanism, it's basically like the heart of a blockchain. It's how the network agrees on which transactions are valid and make sure that everything runs smoothly, right? And the Stellar Consensus Protocol, it's known for its speed and efficiency.
Okay.
Which is really important for a cryptocurrency that aims to be used by millions of people every day.
So the better the consensus mechanism, the faster and smoother transactions can happen on the Pi network.
Exactly. And while the open network launch, it might not have included any major overhauls to the FCP.
Right.
It's very likely that they've done a lot of fine-tuning and adjustments,
Okay.
To handle the increased traffic and complexity that comes with opening up to the world.
So it's like upgrading the engine of a car to handle a longer and more demanding road trip.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And remember how we were talking about nodes earlier?
Yeah.
Those computers that help validate transactions and keep the network secure, well, their role, it actually becomes even more critical in an open network.
Okay, is that because now there are potentially more bad actors trying to get in and cause trouble?
That's part of it, but it's also about scale, right? The more nodes you have and the more reliable those nodes are,
Right.
the more resilient and decentralized the Pi network becomes.
Okay.
And that's why the core team is being so strategic about which pioneers they invite to transition their nodes over.
So it's not just about anyone running a node. It's about having a network of trusted and reliable validators who will actually uphold the integrity of the whole blockchain.
Precisely. It's a very delicate balance
Right.
between, opening up and making sure everything is secure.
Right. Okay. All this TikTok is fascinating, but let's bring it back down to earth for a sec.
Sure.
What does this open network launch actually mean for developers out there? What kind of cool stuff can they start building now that Pi is connected to the wider crypto world?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, there's huge potential for Pi to be integrated into other platforms and applications.
Right.
Developers, they could create cross-chain bridges that allow Pi to interact with other blockchains.
Okay.
Or they could build Pi-based decentralized exchanges.
So a whole financial ecosystem could spring up around Pi with its own lending platforms, prediction markets, who knows what else.
Exactly. And because Pi is really focused on real-world utility,
Right.
we could see developers creating apps that actually address real-world problems.
Yeah.
Imagine a decentralized ride-sharing app that uses Pi for payments, or a supply chain management system that tracks goods using the Pi blockchain.
Wow.
I mean, the possibilities are really endless.
I'm starting to get why everyone's so excited about this.
Yeah.
It's not just about trading Pi and making a quick buck.
Right.
It's about building something bigger, something that could genuinely change the way we interact with the world.
And that's what makes this open network launch so significant.
Yeah.
It's not just a technical upgrade. It's a statement about where Pi Network is heading.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're here to stay and we're ready to play on the global stage.
Exactly. And with such a passionate and engaged community behind them,
Right.
I wouldn't bet against them.
Yeah, speaking of the community, let's talk about governance for a minute.
Sure.
Now that Pi is on the open network, how are decisions going to be made? Like who's in charge here?
Yeah, that's a key question with any decentralized system. And
Right.
for what I've seen, Pi Network is really committed to community involvement.
I mean, the whole model is based on building this massive distributed network of pioneers, right?
Right. Right, and they've actively encouraged feedback and participation from the community throughout their whole development process.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this evolves now that they're on the open network.
So we might see things like on-chain voting, where pioneers can directly influence decisions about the future of the network.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
They could also implement like decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs,
All right, DAOs.
which are basically like self-governing entities that run on code
Yeah.
and allow token holders to vote on proposals and allocate resources.
So instead of having like a small group of people calling all the shots, the power could actually be distributed among like the entire Pi network community.
Exactly. Of course, decentralized governance, it's tricky. It
Yeah.
requires a lot of trust and transparency.
Yeah.
And it can be, messy at times,
That's right.
but it also has the potential to be incredibly powerful.
Right.
Because it gives everyone a voice, right?
Yeah.
And it aligns incentives in a way that traditional centralized systems just can't match.
I agree. If Pi Network can like successfully navigate the challenges of decentralized governance,
Yeah,
it could set a really important precedent for the entire crypto space.
I think so too.
It's like they're experimenting with a new way of organizing and making decisions, and the whole world's kind of watching to see if it works.
And the stakes are high because if it does work, it could fundamentally change the way we think about power and control in online communities.
Okay, that's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But let's come back to like the practical realities for a minute.
Sure.
We all know the crypto world is facing increased scrutiny from regulators.
Uh-huh.
So how is Pi Network like dealing with all that?
That's a huge question. And to be honest, it's a moving target, right?
Right.
Regulations around cryptocurrency, they're still being developed in many parts of the world.
So how does Pi Network kind of stay ahead of the game?
Well, I mean, from what we've talked about, their emphasis on KYC and KYB, that's a great starting point.
Okay.
Shows that they're serious about compliance and transparency, and their focus on real world use cases
Right.
rather than just speculation, that
Yeah.
that aligns with what a lot of regulators are looking for.
So instead of trying to like fly under the radar,
Yeah.
they're proactively engaging with regulators and trying to be part of the solution.
Exactly. And their commitment to community governance, that could also be a big plus.
Okay.
Because it shows they're not trying to centralize power
Right.
or operate in a shadowy way.
It's like they're building a cryptocurrency for the real world.
Yeah.
One that's designed to like coexist with existing systems, not overthrow them.
And that approach could give them a real advantage in the long run.
Yeah.
As regulations around crypto become clearer and more established.
It makes sense. The last thing anyone wants is another like crypto meltdown caused by, shady dealings or lack of oversight.
Right.
Pi Network seems to be taking a different path.
They're definitely charting their own course. It's a bold experiment.
Right.
And it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
Okay, so we've covered the technical aspects, the developer opportunities, the governance model, even the regulatory landscape. But what about the bigger picture? Like let's talk economics for a minute.
Okay.
Could Pi, with its focus on accessibility and real-world use, could it actually make a dent in the global economy?
And now we're getting into the really speculative territory.
Yeah.
But it's a question worth pondering. Pi Network has set some pretty ambitious goals.
Yeah.
And they've managed to build a massive and passionate community.
Yeah, and their focus on everyday use cases is really intriguing.
Oh.
Like if they can actually get Pi integrated into people's daily lives.
Yeah.
It could have like a ripple effect throughout the whole economy.
Imagine like a world where you can use Pi to buy your grocery, to pay your rent, even to get paid for your work.
Yeah, it would mean a whole new level of financial inclusion.
Right.
Especially for people who are currently excluded from traditional banking systems.
Exactly. And because Pi is designed to be easy to use,
Yeah.
even for people who aren't, tech savvy,
Right.
it could potentially reach a much wider audience than other cryptocurrencies.
But let's be realistic for a second. There are there are a lot of ifs here.
Right.
Pi Network, they still have a long way to go before they achieve, like, mainstream adoption.
Absolutely. They face stiff competition from established players in the payments and financial services industries.
Right.
And the cryptocurrency market itself is notoriously volatile and unpredictable.
So while Pi Network has a lot of potential,
Yeah.
it's important to kind of temper our expectations and recognize the challenges that they face.
I agree, but even if Pi doesn't become, the world's dominant currency, the experiment itself is incredibly valuable.
Because it's pushing the boundaries of what's possible with blockchain technology and exploring new models for community ownership and financial empowerment.
Precisely. Whether or not Pi, wins in the traditional sense,
Right.
they're already making a significant contribution to the evolution of the internet and the way we think about value exchange.
Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the social impact of Pi Network.
Okay.
They've created this massive global community of pioneers.
Yeah.
What's the significance of that, and how could that actually contribute to their success?
The Pi Network community, it's one of its most defining features, without a doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked about their numbers, right?
Yeah.
Over 47 million users worldwide.
That's huge.
But it's not just about quantity.
Right.
It's about the level of engagement and enthusiasm that we see from pioneers.
They're not just like passive users.
Right.
They're actively involved in promoting Pi, educating others about cryptocurrency,
Yeah.
and contributing to the development of the whole ecosystem.
They're true believers in the Pi Network vision.
Yeah.
And they're spreading the word with a level of passion that you rarely see in other crypto projects.
And that kind of like grassroots support,
Uh-huh.
it can be incredibly powerful.
Oh yeah.
It's like a built-in marketing and advocacy network.
Exactly. They're not just promoting Pi to make a quick profit.
Right.
They genuinely believe in its potential to change the world, and that authenticity.
Yeah, it resonates with it's like a social movement as much as it is a technology project.
I think that's a really insightful observation.
Yeah.
Pi Network has tapped into something deeper than just the desire to make money.
It's about like community, belonging,
Right.
part of something bigger than yourself.
And that sense of shared purpose.
Yeah.
It's a huge asset for any project.
Right.
Especially one that's trying to disrupt established systems and build a new future.
So the Pi Network community, it's more than just a bunch of users.
Right.
They're a driving force behind the project's growth
Mm-hmm.
and a key ingredient in its potential success.
Absolutely. And as the Pi Network expands into this open network era,
Right.
the role of the community, it will become even more important.
They'll be the ambassadors for Pi, the educators for newcomers,
Yeah, yeah.
and the advocates for the project's values.
And they'll be the ones who ultimately decide whether Pi Network achieves its ambitious goals.
It's a powerful reminder that in the world of decentralized technologies,
Yeah.
the community is everything. Well, we've covered like a ton of ground in this deep dive, into Pi Network's open network launch.
We have.
From the technical stuff to like, the economic implications. I mean, it's clear this is a project with like really big ambitions.
It really is. And while there are definitely challenges ahead, I mean, they've made incredible progress, especially considering they've only just opened up to the world.
Yeah, and I think what really strikes me is like the potential social impact.
Right.
We talked about financial inclusion, community governance, even the idea of like a more equitable digital economy. It's almost like Pi Network is trying to build a better internet, one where value is distributed more fairly and everyone has a chance to like actually participate.
That's a really interesting way to put it. They're not just building a cryptocurrency. They're trying to build a movement, and whether or not they fully achieve their goals, I think the ripple effects of what they're doing could be felt for years to come.
Yeah, it's definitely a story worth watching, and we'll be following it closely here on the deep dive.
Absolutely.
But for now, let's bring it back to our listener for a second.
Okay.
What does this all mean for someone who's like hearing about Pi Network for the very first time?
Well, if you're intrigued by the idea of a more inclusive and accessible cryptocurrency, Pi Network is definitely worth checking out.
And remember, it's still early days.
Yeah,
You can download the app, and you can start mining Pi for free.
it's easy.
It's a low-risk way to kind of get involved and see what it's all about.
Exactly. Do your own research, engage with the community, and decide for yourself if Pi Network aligns with your values and your vision for the future.
And who knows, maybe you'll become a pioneer yourself and contribute to the growth of this fascinating ecosystem.
It's a chance to be part of something new, something that's challenging the status quo and trying to create a more equitable digital world.
Well said. I think that's the perfect quote to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Pi Network's Open Network launch.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
As always.
And as always, we encourage you to stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged in shaping the future you want to see.